This meeting is being recorded.
Hello and welcome to Faces of the MRM. This week we have a good friend of mine, Clark Savage Jr. Now, Clark, I met you in the National Coalition for Men, and I can honestly say that you are someone I have a great deal of respect for, and I have gained a lot of wisdom from you, and it is an honor to have you on, so thank you very much for being here.
My sincere pleasure. Thank you, Blue Orange, and I appreciate your inviting me. I'm not going to belabor the issue here today because Junior and I are preparing to go skiing for a week, so we'll be brief and hopefully we'll be able to exchange some information here and shed a little light on a subject that I feel is extremely important. So thank you again for inviting.
Well, that's awesome to hear, you and Junior. Fatherhood is something that I don't feel gets enough credit in society today. And the family court system, a common issue that MRAs talk about is how men and fathers especially are discriminated against in the family court when it comes to issues like child custody and alimony and child support. Now, it's not that it doesn't happen to women too. I know women who have been victims of the system, but statistically, the vast majority of parents who lose custody to their children and become alienated from their children are fathers.
Unfortunately, you are exactly correct, and it's a trend that does not appear to be diminishing in spite of high-profile cases to the contrary. For every Kelly Clarkson, there are a dozen Brad Pitts who get dragged through not only the child court, child custody, divorce machine, but also the criminal justice system because of allegations that are proven to be unfair and undocumented and
untrue.
Incorrect and untrue. Thank you very much. And I'm certain that this contributes to the demoralization of men in society and how men's physical, emotional, and spiritual health seems to be under assault, and why we see such tremendously outrageous numbers for men's mortality.
Fathers committing suicide.
Two recent cases, an African-American gentleman who was noted for his dancing skills and his appearance on certain daytime talk shows and, Dancing with the Stars. He's a father of 3, and within recent memory, within the last few days, another high-profile case where false allegations were put upon a school principal who subsequently took his own life. And those false allegations turned out to be retracted by the person who falsely accused him of ill doing, and but by that time his life was over, literally and now figuratively. And this is unquestionably unfair to men in general, fathers in particular.
The word I use to describe the family court machine, as you call it, and I want to get back to that in just a second, but I call it evil. Some of the things that I read men going through is just see their own children and the way they are essentially abused by the court system. The family court system in the United States is just out of control, and there are cases that I read where it seems entirely unconstitutional. completely without any logic or any sound reasoning at all, and there seems to be no checks and balances on it whatsoever.
And to kind of bring that back full circle to this issue of allegations that turn out to be unfounded, when a person makes such allegations and they are determined to be untrue, there's no recourse in civil or criminal court for the man whose life has been ruined. I hear nothing about, oh, excuse me, I take that back. I saw one case where a woman made false allegations against a gentleman, and she's serving time. But this is vastly outnumbered by the cases where it's just swept under the rug or ignored, the fact that a man's life has been ruined by such false allegations.
Now, you use the word machine to describe the family court system. It does seem to me that it's almost deliberately set up this way rather than just grossly incompetent. But what would you say? Do you think it's just incompetence, or do you think there's malice to it? Or maybe a mixture of both?
Well, it's a monolith, it's a system, it's an institution. And when that many stakeholders are driving something in one direction, a single man trying to fight such a behemoth is mowed over. I would say that for every person of goodwill who participates in this system and perpetuates this system, I would say that there are 20 more people who are either of ill will or they're just trying to make a buck.
Okay,
and
so
that may be the evil that you're referring to.
So let me ask you, you identify as a men's rights activist.
I do.
That's what you chose. Now, do you identify as a feminist?
You know, I used to.
Used to. Now this is what I want to get at now. So I want to ask you why you switched from feminism to men's rights, and do you feel that feminists that you talk to are receptive and understanding and sympathetic to this issue?
Okay, so why did I used to? Well, because of my demographic, women in my demographic would rightly, in the recent past, would rightly have been identified as feminists, and I completely supported them in the past. However, in recent years, the shift from equality in the women's rights movement and in the feminist movement, as I see it, has gone from equal rights to something more authoritarian and something less based on fact and evidence, and more based on the presumption of one party being correct when there are always two sides to any story, be it civil or criminal cases. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, the reason I bring it up, a lot of people will watch this video, and the criticism that MRAs get very often is, you guys are more about being against feminists than actually caring about men's issues. Why don't you guys stop bothering feminists and actually address men's issues? Well, here's what happened in Florida in 2012. There was a push for reform for divorce and alimony laws. and it looked like it was going to pass until it was sharply protested by NOW, the National Organization for Women. And you had a case of a 72-year-old male with Alzheimer's who is unable to receive proper medical care because he is paying out permanent alimony, lifelong alimony. Now, alimony is not the same thing as custody, but the family court system, as you said, is one giant monolith. And so when men's rights activists try, and this is why I bring up feminists, if you're watching this right now and you think, why is he bringing feminists into this? Because the way it happens, in the vast majority of cases, when a men's rights or a father's rights organization tries to talk about this issue and tries to talk about how men and fathers are discriminated against in family courts, our single biggest pushback, the people who fight against us the most, the people who resist reform and making divorce laws equal the most, are feminists. In Spain, they have extremely unequal laws regarding divorce, domestic violence, and they have separate courts for men and women, where men literally are not able to defend themselves with evidence. All a woman has to do is accuse a man and he can be found guilty and sent to prison. Who pushed for these laws? Feminist organizations. Who pushes against reforming these laws? Feminist organizations. So I think you did answer my question. You used to be a feminist because you believe in equality and you thought that feminism represented that. But when you started having, and don't let me speak for you, when you started having these conversations about fathers' rights and about the problems men face in custody issues and the family court system, my guess is you did not get very positive reception from feminists.
That is correct. And um, as I recall, when I would address these issues with women who I trusted, I would receive laughter and derision when I thought that my point of view was a serious point to be addressed and considered seriously. No, I'd receive laughter and derision, and it was shortly after that that I began to see that feminism, as it's being pursued and practiced and implemented lately, is really not something that I can continue to endorse as I did.
It's not the definition of feminism that you're against, it's the implementation. It's the way it's being done, essentially.
I'd say that's precisely correct. Yes, at least in my
So,
view.
so let me ask you the nonsense questions that I absolutely hate. This is such a part of our culture today, but it's impossible not to talk about this if you are an American. So you are Black and you are a men's rights activist. Now, the perception that many people have of the men's rights movement is that it is a sexist, patriarchal, white male only, ultra right wing group. What would your reaction to that be?
I would say that it's a big tent, and I'm sure that someone can look for outliers and find them, outliers who fit those characteristics. But I'm certainly not, and I'd say that I'm well within one standard deviation of the mainstream men who are involved in this movement, who have awakened to a reality that is not what is being portrayed, or is not what they are told it is. Now, I like to say that reality is a consensus, and the consensus of men that I listen to, and some women that I listen to, tell me that things are not fair and that men are getting men and boys are getting the shaft in terms of college admissions, in terms of college graduation, in terms of careers and occupations, careers and occupations that have either minimal risk of health and safety or a maximum risk of health and safety. Um, in terms of academic performance, in terms of being medicated
That's a big one. My
for one
generation,
reason or another.
my
Now,
generation, they call us the Adderall generation because they took all the boys in my generation and they put us on essentially speed pills.
wow. Oh, it's a type of amphetamine salt. That's what it says on the bottle,
That's
or
what it is.
so I'm told. But
That's what it is.
but I one of my colleagues who I greatly admire and respect put me in touch with a Netflix documentary entitled "Take Your Pills." I strongly recommend that people check this out because it right off the bat it talks about the hyper competitive nature of college admissions, education, scholarship, and completion, and how folks are trading these various medications like trading cards, like like bubblegum cards, like baseball cards. Um, and most of the individuals in this documentary were women, college age women, who freely describe this type of thing. Now, what does that mean? That um, well, it means that most of the people in college today, 60% or more, are women. Most of the people graduating from college today and who are excelling educationally are girls and women.
And to make it clear, because people might jump on that and say, "Oh, you're against women getting ahead." No, no, no. We're against men falling behind. We're not upset that girls are doing well. We're upset that boys are behind.
Not
Because if women
only
are
not only
60%, men are
not only
40,
falling behind, but being pushed behind.
pushed behind. Because there are less,
Absolutely.
even though males are the minority of college students, there are less male scholarships available. So the group that is already underrepresented is given less opportunities to go to college.
Precisely.
And
Precisely.
something I often get into a debate with, and I'm sure you've experienced this 100 times better than I can ever describe it, is that if you are a black male in America, you're hit with a double whammy. You're pushed back twice.
Don't get me started. That's a given, and that's another one of those things that I correctly identified in your opening remarks. Once again, thank you very much for
Thank
having.
you.
But yeah, I've and so this is a kind of a segue for me into something that is very near and dear to my heart, and that's my son. And so we've talked about educational opportunities and how he may be not given the same opportunities for success. And that has implications that could affect the rest of his life, both childhood and adulthood. And um, there are all kinds of research studies that tell us that when he gets to the finish line, to use a different metaphor for something else, when he gets to the finish line, he's not going to be seeing his options as open as I might have when I reached the finish line of growth, development, and career achievement.
You think it'll be worse for him in his age group?
I'm sincerely concerned about his options, his choices, and what will be available for him in 15 plus or minus years. Yeah, I'm seriously concerned.
And let me tell you, you are most certainly not the only one. We hear so much about the boy crisis, the boy crisis, the boy crisis, but what virtually no non-MRA source seems to want to really look at is, well, why is the boy crisis happening? Maybe it's not their fault. Maybe it's not because they're misbehaving. Maybe it's because there is sexism at play. Maybe boys can experience sexism. Maybe the education system is biased against men, which MRAs, of course, know. Studies have shown, such as a study I'm going to link in this video from the MIT School of Economics, proving that there is a bias against males in education. And similar studies like this have been replicated. Maybe replicated is the wrong word, but found extremely similar results in many countries around the world, in different education systems, showing very similar results of this pattern of bias against male students. And so,
when those studies are brought forth and discussed, that discussion is squelched, and ad hominem attacks about, oh well, this is not meaningful science, or this is biased because you're a man, etc., etc. Yeah.
And I hate to prove the point again, but when you say it's attacked, let me ask you, by whom?
Oh yes. Mm-hmm.
So, you know,
rhetorical question, but I think we all know whom.
Right. So anyway, Clark, this was fantastic, and I get the feeling that we are going to have to do a second episode, because I get the feeling that if you want to talk about your concerns for your son, you could go on for a long time.
I could do that. Both my concerns, and because he's an extremely sensitive, extremely intelligent, extremely gentle young man, and he has such a wealth of potential that I see blossoming every day, except when he tries to beat me in skiing, which he'll probably start doing tomorrow. But I see great. I am still hopeful. I remain hopeful. Hope is something that can survive when optimism is being punched in the gut, but you can still have hope. And I'm hopeful for his future, but we have to create that future. There's a philosophy and some religious tenets that say that we are here to constantly create the world that we've been given. And so my philosophy comports with that. And I feel it's up to me and you and like-minded men and women to constantly create that world that we want to give to our sacred posterity.
Fantastic. All right, Clark, thank you very much. I gotta say, this was an outstanding episode.
I really enjoyed talking with you today, man, and I'll speak with you on Sunday, but I may be laid up. The dude might mess me over, knock me out.
Enjoy your vacation, man. Look, enjoy your vacation. 100%. I'll see you.
Take care.